if you or someone on your team can't, map the cost to the benefits in your business, then it's going to be very difficult to have a grasp of this equation and make good decisions.
If you had to impart some wisdom into either a new business owner or a person that's been in business for a long time, and they really want to gauge the value that they're getting from their technology, what's a non-negotiable? It'd be the absolute one thing you should be looking at when it comes to value with technology.
Well, I don't know if there are any non-negotiables. And the reason I say that is because businesses throughout the US they're managing, right, without doing this process well. The question is whether or not you want to, optimize it, or if you want to improve. So in that scenario, I'd say that the question of what's the one thing to focus on is, before you can get into the value equation is really, cost versus benefit. You have to be able to understand the components of both of those things in whatever area you're looking at. But honestly, those areas are going to bleed into every other area. So finance bleeds into marketing, bleeds into IT, bleeds into HR. So you got to do the best you can to separate those things. But in any one of those business areas.
And this is a quote from Mark Gibson. He says this a lot, and I really appreciate it because I think it's so important in our conversations that we have throughout the week. He always says, I want to make sure I don't get stuck in my own echo chamber, because I know it sounds good to me, but it's always good to get a fresh perspective. And to that point, to Mark's point in that quote, if you're a business owner and you really don't understand and you can't answer those questions, you absolutely need to find a third party or someone who has expertise in that field that can help you unlock the answers to those questions. How would you define the word value for our listeners in this context?
That's a good question, right? It's such a subjective concept, I think, at least in terms of its practical application. Most people have a way of looking at decisions, and or assets from a value perspective, whether it's kind of, they look at it as risk reward or pros cons, it might even be sort of cost benefit. But at the end of the day, value is usually this equation. It's a relationship between what did I lose versus what did I gain, right? And so if you got more than you lost, good value. If you lost more than you gained, not as much. So I think that's how conceptually, I think of value as most people, they just put different labels to it.
Sure. And as we go about our business, we find it very interesting. As you know, Mark and I, we are small business owners ourselves. And the niche that we operate in the IT industry is much different than a lot of our peers, because we focus more on the value and the risk to a business from a technology and IT perspective versus looking at it, your traditional technology, whether you have the right computers, you have the right software, the security controls. Those are all great, but we take a different approach. If I'm going to spend $1,500 on a piece of technology and a laptop, on a vendor side, you can say that transaction is important because, yes, I need a laptop, but it really goes deeper than that. You got to ask yourself, okay, what am I going to get in return for that? But even more so, what is that piece of technology? And I'm just using technology as an example. What's that going to allow my business to do? What can that thing do for me? What type of value can that bring with me? Because how you evaluate multiple people or multiple businesses that are offering you the same piece of technology or equipment over that period of time, that's really what you have to look at. You have to go down to the lowest level and ask yourself the benefit. If you can understand at the end of the day, those pieces, how they fit into your business model, I think it would be easier for you to understand the value that you're getting from whatever it is that you're looking to bring in for your business.
Yeah. Decisions are never made in a vacuum, right? there's always context. There's always other influencing factors in terms of evaluating the outcomes. So, we talk a lot about people, process, technology. Those are all blended together, right? But you're going to make decisions at people levels. You're going to make decisions at process levels. You're going to make decisions at technology level. And talking about it from an IT perspective, all of those are part of understanding and measuring the value you're getting from IT. At the end of the day, tools or technology, those should serve as an amplifier of the impact that your people are having through process, right? I mean, if you look at it from a pyramid perspective, at the foundation level is your people. People bring a certain level of value to an organization through their personal characteristics, skill sets, experiences, and so forth. Those are then multiplied by good process, which is then unlocked by the right technology. So the blend of those things is how you understand what value you're getting from the technology. And to your example of, buying a laptop for $1,500, that maybe that's the right laptop, maybe it's not, depends on kind of what you're doing in your business, but the right laptop might be $2,200 versus $1,500. Does that $700 delta matter? Well, it depends, right? Can I do the same things with the $1,500 device that I can with the $2,200? If I can, then yeah, that's probably not the right delta, right? That makes no sense. I'm not getting anything additional in return. But if that $700 unlocks a process or a person and allows them to drive $25,000 more in value to your business for that $700 investment, that seems like a no-brainer, right? I mean,
Why is it that people, regardless of whatever product it is you're buying, always associate value with dollars? Well, why do you think that is at the highest level?
Well, money is, it's the universal language for, and maybe universal is not the right word. It's the standard
Yeah.
for, measuring value, and not just in business, but in any part of life, right? That's the whole point of currency. Currency is so that I'm not trying to trade my corn for your oats, or whatever, as we did for thousands of years as human beings. And so, currency becomes the standard unit of measure for, cost and benefit. And so therefore, of course, it's going to translate to how we evaluate value, right? It's just a matter of, the money I spent, did I get an equivalent or greater return for that when I spent it? And so it's, when the IT guy is talking to the marketing guy, who's talking to the CEO, who's talking to whoever, those are all different languages around benefits and investments. And that's where the breakdown happens a lot of times around value, right? Is it's not a foundational concept when I say, hey, we need to do patching. Not everybody understands why that matters. We need to invest in, brand new CPUs that are more powerful than the current generation. Not everybody understands why that matters. And so that's when you get into this conversation of how do we translate that to value on the business. And again, we talk about the idea of, I have a more powerful computer that can allow me as a user to either analyze spreadsheets faster, or create them quicker, or design 3D modeling, whether I could do that before, but now I can do it more quickly, or I couldn't do it before, and now I can, so it unlocks what I'm able to do and how I can impact the business. So that's why, again, it's the standard, but you've got to learn to be able to talk about all those different concepts within that standard, which is dollars.
Actually, this is, you and I worked on this. I think you're going to recall this when I bring it up. About 7 years ago, Mark and I, we were at the same company together working on a project. And part of that project, we were evaluating technology. You know, we decided to pilot a handful of laptops, right? There was just the thought to say, hey, let's look at some emerging technology and see if it's viable for the business. And I'd like to think Mark and I came up with a pretty solid plan. We sat down with a good mix of users from across different business units in this company, and we asked questions about what was important to them. What are some things they wanted to evaluate? What are some things in their job that they believe technology could enhance or have a way to make it do it better? And we got some pretty good feedback. And I was one of the participants there. And I know for me personally, it was what I appreciate about it is I like to take a lot of notes, and this particular technology allowed me to use it as a tablet where I can write, and also as a computer where I can keep stuff. So I was able to use technology in multiple ways. So I took something that was very manual in nature, writing on a piece of paper, and created it and digitized it. So I didn't have to go scan notes or retype notes. I had it right there. But the thing that really challenged me, and I think challenged Mark at the end of this, is that when we deployed this technology, about 60 to 70% of the user base did absolutely nothing with it. They carried it around, they didn't use it. And when we came back to do the final evaluation, there was really a lack of feedback. And so, you know, I reflect and think about it today. This is why it's so important to what you just said, Mark, that these decisions shouldn't be made in a vacuum, right? You've got to have buy-in. If you're going to make a decision that impacts your business, number one, you got to make sure you have the right people involved. Number two, you got to make sure they participate. And at the end of the day, you have to make sure you have all the data points, you have touch points, you have enough tangible data to understand, again, the value that you're getting, but also the benefit from everyone in the organization. Because who knows, if everyone would have participated and done what they were supposed to do, the outcome could have been different. But it wound up being a spend of, I think it was about $20,000, maybe $30,000. And where did those things end up? In a locker.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the people process technology equation. It's a blend. It's very difficult to tease out all of those for any particular sort of decision or whatnot. But the other part of that too is that the cost wasn't just the technology, right? I mean, there was time that was spent
That's
sort
right.
of evaluating that. And at the end of the day, like to spend time evaluating technology is a valid cost, right? You need the information to understand how it's going to fit in your business. But it's tough to spend that time and that cost without a clear goal in mind, you know, or a clear evaluation of what you're trying to accomplish. But, you know, when you look at technology or IT, the spends that you have there aren't going to be just about the technology. It's going to be about, you know, how do you secure it? How do you maintain it? How do you integrate it within your organization? Because not doing those things is going to inherently limit the value that you're going to be able to extract from that, right? I mean, value is something that is not like it's sitting on the shelf, you go pick it up and then take it home with you after you put it in your pocket, right? I mean, you got to take value and do something to get it. You know,
Right.
like I buy that laptop and I set it on the shelf. It's not going to clean the office for me. It's not going to do our books or whatever. It's really going to be partnered with somebody else's time, ability, skills to deliver some other value to, you know, impact to the business. Or one of the things to consider too, when you're looking at value, again, is this relationship sort of between what do I lose versus what do I gain? Part of the cost equation is risk, right? Risk is a cost that has to be factored into your decision making. You, whether you intend to or not, you are accepting some level of risk. The question is if it's the right level of risk for you, and that's something that's harder to uncover in areas that you're not as familiar with. And that's the constant challenge as a business owner is, you know, how do I know the areas of risk that, you know, are within the right scope for our business?
If value was a currency, how would you define its traits? Right. And I'm just thinking at a high level. For me, one of the first things I think of is if I look at value, what is a positive benefit in my business, right? What can I tangibly point to and say, I know that if I make an investment in X, that was drastically improve my bottom number, my gross profit margin, just as an example. That's one thing I would think of in terms of how to define that currency. Another thing for me would be how's this going to impact the individuals in my organization, right? Whatever it is, the team that I have, whether it's 10, 20, 30, 50 people, how is that going to impact them in their roles, in their responsibilities, in how they're able to deliver on their jobs and goals? Another thing, I'm trying to think of other ways, Mark, some ideas. What would for you, if you had to define value as a currency, what would be some traits you'd point to? Or as a business owner, what would be some things that you look at to say, yep, this definitely checks the box in terms of value for me?
Well, and that's kind of the point here, is that it's not standard and it's not objective. And so how I'm going to define value is going to change from one situation to the next. That's what makes this so hard, right? Is being able to have a conversation with another human being to help them understand what, not only the total cost is, right? There's this concept of total cost of ownership that lots of people talk about. But how do you get your arms around that for whatever your decision is? But then on the other side of that, it's, how do I get my arms around the total benefit of ownership? That gets talked about a whole lot less, right? And so when you talk about IT in particular, when we want to define the value of IT, that's really hard to do if I don't understand what I'm getting from IT. And I don't mean the bits and bytes, right? It's not a matter of saying, like, that's how it's been boiled down in so many conversations is, well, you're going to get this from IT, which is a new computer and a network device. And, we'll be able to connect you on the internet. You've got a phone. Cool, go. But that's not the sum total of IT, right? Either the cost of it or the benefit of it. So we've oversimplified it instead of taking some of those more challenging concepts and working to translate them into the language of business, which again is money, right? I mean, or accounting, I guess, is really the saying, right? Accounting is the language of business. So how do I take all of those concepts and translate them? That's what I have to be able to do. It's not a matter of necessarily how I'm going to define value. It's understanding how you define value and then marrying those two perspectives.